Hey there, it's John from Heroes and Legends, and welcome to a special edition of the Magic the Gathering Market Watch, where we're going to look at the state of Standard as we move into Protour Amonkhet. Now, of course, the Pro Tours this weekend, I expect to see that a lot of the changes that we're currently seeing in the market may be indicators of some of the things we're going to see at the Pro Tour. So we're going to take a real close look at Standard. We're going to look at the top 10 hot cards and the top 10 cold cards currently in the Standard format, and then we'll come back again at the end of the Pro Tour and kind of see if these were truly indicators of what happened there or not. Now, having said that, before we get started, if you check out the description below, you'll find a couple ways to help support the channel, one of which is our Patreon page. We're actually really close to one of our goals, so check that out if you can. Another way to help support us is the Amazon affiliate store. If you make any purchases through any of the links there, a small percentage will come back to help support the channel. You'll find all the cards we're talking about today in those links if you want to pick up any singles or anything like that, as well as a whole bunch of other products. All right, having said that, let's get into the cards that are currently losing value this week in Standard. Coming in at number 10 is Champion of Rhomas, down 39 cents to $1.29. Now, it's not a big loss, but percentage-wise, it's a large loss for this card. The biggest issue with this card, I think, it's very high variance, and it hasn't found a foothold in Standard because of that. I think it's a fine commander card, a great casual card, but the problem is you're playing this for 4 mana. You can't really do anything unless you can untap with it, and even then you have to have a target in your hand to hit with this. And it's just not always going to work out that way for you. And because of that inconsistency, I think is going to keep it out of Standard at this point. And yeah, I do think this will be relegated to a bulk rare status. Coming in at number 9, Gideon Marshal of Paragon. This down 42 cents to $6.16. Now, of course, this is the Gideon from the Planeswalker deck. So you cannot get this in a regular pack of Amonkhet. You'd have to pick up the Planeswalker deck. Now, this card had a little bit of maybe false inflation not too long ago, just due to the fact that if you checked out MTG Goldfish, they had a really fun build on there, and it was just all Gideons, Gideon Tribal, and it really tried to exploit the emblem of Gideon of the Trials, and then just shoehorn a bunch of Gideons in the deck. And it is a fun deck. It's a totally fun build to try to put together and just play some kitchen table magic, but it's not something that is necessarily going to take down the Pro Tour next week or anything like that. So this card's already on the way down. The other thing that makes the value sometimes of these cards a little bit awkward is single sellers don't like to crack a whole lot of this Planeswalker deck product to sell singles. They just don't really find that worth their time and money. So at the end of the day, sometimes the marketplace gets a little dry on these cards, but you can go to your local game store or even a big box store like Walmart and Target and pick these things up all day long if you want to. Coming in at number 8 is Angel of Sanctions, down 66 cents to $5.50. Now, this is a card that is seeing a little bit of play in Standard, but it is actually taking up a rather small niche spot right now. You see this sometimes in the Selesnya Tokens decks currently, and there's not a whole lot of those around. But what's awkward about this card is it's competing directly with Avacyn for space in decks, and that's going to be a problem as long as Avacyn's still in the format, even if actually, Avacyn's not even seeing a whole lot of play today, but even if there was a place for a 5-drop white card, Avacyn most of the time probably would take that spot. Now, this is still a great card, and when maybe Avacyn leaves the format, there's a chance during its lifespan it could get more notoriety, but as of right now, this will continue to decline. Coming in at number 7 is Glorious End, down 68 cents to $2.50. Here's another card that I think a lot of people just are enamored with, just the concept of basically a red time walk for 3, but it does have the drawback that if you can't close out the game or you can't find a way to stop the condition from happening, like with a Gideon emblem or something like that, then you're going to lose the game. Now, again, it's a very high variance card, and unfortunately, you're not going to see this in any play in Standard or anything like that. This is more of a casual card and a commander card, things of that nature. It's a fun card, but again, it's not going to get that foothold in the more competitive formats at this point. Coming in at number 6 is Saheeli Rai, down $1 to $7.71. She is still seeing a little bit of fringe play in Standard. There's a 4-color Planeswalker deck that's kind of interesting that's out there right now. It does run this card. However, obviously, with the banning of Felidar Guardian, this card has taken a huge hit. Coming in at number 5 is Nissa Steward of Elements, down $1.10 to $14.85. Another card that is in that Planeswalker 4-color deck. But I do think Nissa has the possibility over time to show up in a lot of different types of decks over the course of her life anyway in Standard. So this is one to watch. I do think 1485 is a little high for this card at this point. I feel like this will drop, and maybe within a few weeks we'll be looking at perhaps $8, $9 Nissas, and that feels a little more on par with what I'd feel comfortable paying for this card. Coming in at number 4 is Harsh Mentor, down $1.23 to $4.67. Now, this is a card that a lot of folks, myself included, wanted to see maybe get a little bit of a foothold in Modern. It felt like a card that could be good maybe in like an Naya Burn deck or maybe some other places, but it's a little too early to call at this point. It takes Modern a little more time to incorporate some of these new cards than, of course, Standard, which is going to be an environment that moves a lot faster. So let's give it a little time. I don't want to pass too much of a harsh judgment on this card quite yet, but it is dropping pretty quickly. Now, it is seeing a little bit of play in Vintage, which is interesting. It's an interesting indicator of maybe things to come. The only problem is Vintage, because so few players actually can afford to play Vintage. Vintage isn't going to move the price of a card or anything like that. So just seeing Vintage play isn't enough for this to stop from falling financially. But again, maybe it will lead to things down the road. Coming in number 3 is As Foretold, down $1.55 to $9.37. Well, there is a Modern deck that has been brewed around this, and of course the Suspend cards. It's actually a control deck. It's called As Foretold Control, and it is showing up in some of the small leagues and such. So this is another card you want to kind of wait and see how it performs when some big tournaments come around in the future. It has potential, but right now, again, I feel like it's a little expensive at $9.37. I think we'll continue to drop, at least in the short term. Coming in number 2 is Gideon of the Trials, down $2.33 to $22.63. Now, this was the highest valued card coming out of the pre-release, so you can almost expect, of course, that it should be going down, and it is. Gideon is seeing a little bit of play in Standard and Control decks, though. So as long as the Control decks are doing well, and they feel like they are making a little bit of a bounce back now in this new meta, there's some good tools, and we're going to see some of those in the cards that are going up in value. I think Gideon will at least have a home for now. And the card is very economical. 3 casting cost Planeswalker, does a whole lot of stuff. So I think Gideon will find different decks to be a part of during his lifetime in Standard. I don't think you have to worry about that. I do think the price point is a tad high for this card. I do think it will continue to come down. I'd feel a little more comfortable spending maybe $12, $15 for a card like this as opposed to $22. This weekend, if it gets a little camera time, it may stop sliding, might even spike a little bit, but I think over time this will continue to go down as more packs are opened. And coming in at number 1 is Glorybringer, down $2.40 to $8. I'm a little surprised this card has lost as much as it has this week. On one hand, it's seeing a lot of play in the Standard format right now. It's showing up in a lot of different decks. One of the big ones, of course, is Mardu Vehicles. Mardu Vehicles have found this card as a way to survive a lot of the artifact hate, as really the only vehicles they're running now in most builds is simply the Heart of Kirin's. So if you get rid of the Hearts of Kirin's with some artifact hate, well, guess what? You still have to deal with these Glorybringers, and the deck is still very potent, considering this and some of the other new cards that helped make it better, believe it or not. Like it needed any help, right? But Glorybringer is a rare, and a lot of copies are being open. So on that side of the coin, yeah, it is going to go down in value a little bit. Now, I do think this is going to get a lot of camera time this weekend on the Pro Tour, so I do think we may see a little bit of a spike. Ultimately, it's a rare. This card eventually falls down to the $5, $6 mark, even if it's seeing a lot of play. But I think we're in for a little bit of a roller coaster ride over the course of the next few weeks with this card. All right, let's move on to the cards that have gained value this week. You're going to see here some indicators of decks that players are trying to assemble and put together. Now, you could argue Mardu Vehicles is still, at least at this point, looking like the most popular and powerful deck in the field. But you do have to remember, a lot of players already have the cards to build that deck. So they're picking up just a few odds and ends here and there. So what you're going to see on today's list are pieces of decks that players really have to assemble more from the ground up. Coming in at number 10 is Gideon Ally of Zendikar, up $1.11 to $19.47. Now, the only reason Gideon was trending down recently was just due to the fact that nobody wants to spend $20 on a card when the meta is about to change. But really, Gideon's proved himself time and time again. Every time the meta changes, the card is still really good. It still finds homes in multiple decks. This time, no exception. This is showing up everywhere from Mardu Vehicles to zombies to some control decks. Gideon's just simply going to be around as long as he's legal to be around. Coming in at number 9 is Ulamog, the Ceaseless Hunger, up $1.29 to $17.09. Much like Gideon, this is a card that just hangs in there, and much like Gideon, it's also a card that sees play in other formats like Legacy and Modern. Now, the reason this has gotten a little more attention this week is due to the fact that it's a great target for the Aetherworks decks, especially Teamer Aetherworks. Very happy to run this card. Coming in number 8 is Pull from Tomorrow, up $1.32 to $4.94. So here's another card that is a rare. A lot of packs are going to be open. A lot of these are going to be introduced into the marketplace. Eventually, that will hurt the value of the card, or at least hold it back. But again, this is a card that is pretty much key for like every control deck, and will be for as long as it's in Standard. This card is incredible for control. So because of that, this is another one to watch, especially as we go into Pro Tour weekend. Coming in at number 7, Diregraph Colossus, up $1.33 to $3.12. Now, this is the first of many zombie tribal cards we're going to see on the list today. Week 1, the zombie decks look pretty good. Mono Black did great. The Orzhov decks were hanging in there. Week 2, they looked even better, especially the Mono Black builds. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens to the Pro Tour, but I have a really good feeling that these decks will get a lot of camera time. Not only is it a really good competitive deck, but also it's going to showcase a lot of the new cards and mechanics, and that's something they're going to want to show at the Pro Tour. So I think some of these zombie cards, they're hot right now because a lot of folks are trying to put these decks together. I think they're going to get hotter after this weekend, potentially, too. And also, you know, a lot of players, even if they don't want to play in GPs and stuff, if they just want to play Friday Night Magic or play with their friends, Zombie Tribal is a fun deck, and if you can find deck lists out there of good Zombie Tribal decks that happen to be doing well in tournaments, well, you can imagine a lot of players are going to gravitate towards this. Coming in at number 6, Dread Wanderer, up $1.61 to $3.14 for many of the same reasons I just mentioned. Coming in at number 5 is Fatal Push, up $1.88 to $9.13. This card just doesn't stop. Okay, I talk about this a lot on Market Watches, so I'm going to try to keep it brief. But if you're not aware, it is an uncommon, but it does appear that it doesn't show up as frequent as a normal uncommon. It feels like maybe between uncommon and rare. And because of that fact and the fact that it is seeing a ton of play everywhere you look, the card's just going to keep going up. If for some reason you don't have your playsets of this card yet, go ahead and pick them up. I was really preaching when they were down to like $5 for people to pick them up. I hope you did then. But even at $9, it's not going to get any better. If you are in the market for foils, they're running about $40, $50. It's not going to get any better if you are somebody that likes to collect foils. So just something to think about with this one. But yeah, it's everywhere. The vehicles decks, the Golgari decks, it's showing up in all sorts of standard decks, but it's also showing up in modern and legacy decks. This card has just simply become a staple of the game at this point. Coming in number 4, Relentless Dead, up $1.94 to $17.87. Another really hot card showing up as 4-ofs in all the versions of zombies in Standard. Coming in number 3, Tattered Mummy, up $1.99 to $2.22. Okay, this card's a little deceptive. Don't be fooled by the price here. Even though it has spiked recently, it's already on the way down. In fact, in the last 24 hours, it's lost almost $1. So this is kind of a temporary spike just due to the fact that this is another card that is only available in Planeswalker decks. And because singles sellers don't have a lot readily available, it does cause sometimes a little bit of inflation that is not normal to occur. So we've seen this occur in the past. It's happening again now. It's a cool card. It's not a card that's showing up in any of the big zombie tribal deck lists or anything like that. It's just a matter that it was dried up a little bit in some of the singles marketplaces. People panicked a little bit. It happens to be a zombie with an interesting effect, so that drove a little more attention towards it, of course. But at the end of the day, you can go to your local game store and buy the Liliana Planeswalker deck and get these, or you can go to Walmart and Target and get them. These things are truly everywhere. Coming at number 2 is Crypt Breaker, up $3.57 to $7.99. Yet again, another one of the zombies for the zombie tribal deck. And finally, coming in at number 1, Torrential Gearhulk, up $12.21 to $29.80. And This is a big bounce back for this card. I mean, control in general in this meta has been bouncing back very nicely, and this, of course, being one of the key control cards. A lot of decks are using this as their win condition. Amonkhet tried to give us some other win conditions, and there are some decks trying those out, but for the most part, this is the old tried and true that you're going to find in a lot of control builds going forward. This is a little inflated for me. I mean, when a card goes up $12, $13 in 1 week, you know there's going to be a snapback. But again, we are approaching the Pro Tour, so that could make things a little bit awkward. This could see maybe another spike before it snaps back. This is definitely not a buyer's market for this card. I would say if you're looking to sell this card or trade it away, maybe next weekend or right after the weekend would be a great time to do it. It'll probably hit its peak. But if you're looking to buy these cards and you can afford to wait, I would wait till after the Pro Tour on this one. Having said that, those are the cards for today. And we have a lot of stuff lined up for this week. I want to do some box openings for Amonkhet this week, if I can work those in, depending on what's going on with news and such. And also, I want to try out a new series where we talk about some sealed deck building tips and stuff like that. So look for those to come later in the week. And of course, Saturday we'll have our Market Watch as well. But until next time, hey, thanks for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe, and have a great day. Hey, thanks for watching. This video is made possible by the generous support of viewers like you on Patreon. Check out the description below for links to our Patreon page as well as our Amazon affiliate store, where a small percentage of all sales will also help support the channel. Finally, if you haven't had a chance yet to subscribe, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any new videos on Heroes and Legends. Talk to you again soon, and have a great day.